Hello, my name is Jeremy Barnes, and today I'm going to be doing a review for episode 1 and 2 of What If, Marvel Studios' first animated series and animated project in general. But it's playing currently on Disney Plus, with one episode per week going to be released, up to 9 episodes, I think. So yesterday, Wednesday, was the second episode, but since the episodes are super short, I'm gonna do a review for every 2 episodes. So I won't do one for every single episode, but I'll group them together. If there's one that like I really love, then I might do a review just for that one by itself. But otherwise, I'll do every 2 weeks for every 2 episodes. And I'll probably end it with the last 3 episodes in one video. But we'll see. So first, I'm going to talk about the first episode, which is What If Captain Carter were the first Avenger. So basically, that episode kind of just switches Peggy Carter for Steve Rogers as the protagonist of the movie Captain America: The First Avenger. It really stays true to the blueprint of the original movie. It just switches some things that would change because of Peggy now being Captain Carter or being a super soldier. So overall, I just want to say that the animation style is really dope. At first, it seemed a little bit choppy to me, like it didn't seem like it flowed, or there were moments where you could notice where it was like, I don't know, like the jump from one frame to another was evident. But after a while, I got pretty used to it, like pretty quickly, and it's actually super stylish, and it actually does flow really nicely. Like it's really fluid in the movement, um, like water, which is dope, especially with the action. And this episode was action packed, man. Like Peggy as a super soldier, as Captain America is badass, man, and she kicks all types of ass in the first episode. And there's just so many shots that are gorgeous to look at. Like the visuals are amazing. Um, my favorite parts of the episode was probably Peggy being a badass and the action specifically. I thought it was really cool when she teamed up with the Hydra Stomper, which is a twist on the Iron Man armor in this universe created by Howard Stark before getting to Tony. And the person who pilots the Hydra Stomper is none other than Steve Rogers. So he's still able to get in on the action even though he didn't become a super soldier. And I thought that was a really interesting twist and actually pretty cool. And the reason why it actually works or makes sense is that Howard was always able to make an Iron Man suit. He just didn't have anything to power it with at that time. But the way that they power it in the episode is that they use a Tesseract because the Allies get it a lot earlier than they do in the original timeline. So I thought that was a really cool twist, and the design of it is really cool and everything too. Man, my favorite action scene was when Peggy and Steve are up in the sky taking out the hydroplanes, and it's like the USO tour or whatever, but it's them actually fighting the enemies. And Peggy's like going around just wrecking everybody, bro. Like entire planes by herself, doing flips in the sky and gliding. I was completely blown away by that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, my reaction to that was crazy. I was like smiling big, and that pumped me up, to be honest. I also really liked the romantic moments between Peggy and Steve because that was something that was like there in the original movie, but because they were separated for most of the movie, we didn't really get to see that really fleshed out, which is weird because of how afterward Peggy is such a pivotal part of the MCU. But in this one, they actually give them a lot more moments together, which even on the action, like I said, Captain Carter and the Hydra Stomper. But there are also a little bit of quieter moments, like when Steve and Peggy were about to kiss, basically kind of on a date, but then Howard Stark interrupts. Like that part was like, I was like, come on, Howard, why? But nonetheless, it was still a great moment. Um, I do feel like the episode did struggle a bit in the emotional moments. Like I didn't really feel sad for any of the characters just because of how fast everything was moving. and also how similar it was to the original movie. And the original movie definitely hit more, like specifically at the end when one Peggy leaves and she's separated from Steve, whereas in the original it was Steve crashing the Hydra jet into the ice, and Peggy was left there by herself. But then also, and especially in the like post-credit scene, we see Peggy come back on the other side of the portal that she goes through, and she sees Nick Fury and Clint Barton, like how Loki goes through the Tesseract portal in the Avengers. But that scene in What If kind of combines that scene in Avengers with the ending scene of Captain America: The First Avenger, when Steve wakes up in the present day. But instead of like how Steve says that he had a date and that's what he was thinking about, the first thing when he wakes up, Nick Fury just tells Peggy that they won the war, and that's what she said. Like he asked her if she's gonna be okay, and she's like, "Yeah, we won the war." And that obviously doesn't hit as much as like I had a date because that was like directly linked to that relationship. But it's kind of interesting because it kind of gets you in the mindset of the two different characters, like maybe what the real priorities are. And Steve was really the one that always like loved Peggy, I think, stronger or more than she might have loved him. Um, that just might be me putting my own opinions onto the show, but I think that's a fair assessment of the scene. Her goal was more of ending the war and fighting, because she entered it way earlier than Steve did. So she's just happy, I guess, that they did win. I'm sure if we see more of her, she will like have more questions about Steve and like what he did and all that, similar to how we saw Steve in the Winter Soldier go to the museum and learn about Peggy and all of her contributions. Um, and also left me with the question of, since in the original timeline Peggy was one of the founders of Shield, but in this one she was gone for all this time. Was Steve one of the founders of Shield? Because if so, that would be kind of cool and pretty crazy. But also, I just want to mention the like tentacle monster that Red Skull summons at the end of the episode. Some people think, and I'm starting to buy into this theory that's a character called Shuma Gorath, which is a big tentacle monster from the comics that travels through the multiverse, conquering universes. And I heard that it was rumored that that thing would be the main villain of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So that'll really make sense that this kind of set that up because we didn't really see the full form of it. But we might be seeing that in live action, which would be really cool. I kind of hope it's not the main villain of that movie, but it would be cool if it is a villain. But I kind of wish there's more things going on than just like that. But we'll see. Either way, I think that movie's gonna be dope, and I can't wait to see what happens with Spider-Man No Way Home. So yeah, I'm really excited to see more of Captain Carter, which I think we will for sure see more in this season, and she's already been confirmed for season 2, so that's pretty dope. So now I'm gonna transition over into episode 2, and that episode was called "What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord?" So the best part of this episode for me was the heart of it. And the heart of it, of course, was T'Challa himself. And it was bittersweet in the sense that this was Chadwick Boseman's last performance that we'll get to see or hear, I believe. And luckily, this is not the only episode he's going to appear in, so he will be in others as like the actual Black Panther. So that'll be really dope. And I think even this version of the character will also be appearing again in the season 2. So that's dope, and I can't wait to see more of that. And I really liked in this episode specifically how cool the characters were and their variations from the original timeline. And there's a few characters where they do that flip, and that's really dope. So the first one that we see that really made a big impression on me was Thanos, where they twisted it where because T'Challa was in space and he had more access about all these cosmic things before Infinity War and like in the original timeline, he came across Thanos and he found out about his plan to decimate half of the life on the universe, and he convinced him to think about his plan differently and that there's a different way to go about the resources, which was Thanos' main like objective. And instead of taking getting rid of half of the life, we could just double the resources, which is actually a, an argument that I heard after Infinity War in real life. So that's kind of funny that they have been introducing like fan theories or fan arguments with the multiverse aspect of the MCU, like in Loki. There was a theory that I hadn't heard until now, until they did it in Loki. But there was a fan theory that in Infinity War, when Thanos kills Loki, he wasn't actually dead, and he like made an illusion to have Thanos think that he killed him, but instead he actually made himself appear as some rubble, and you see him flying off in the debris in space after Thanos leaves, him and Thor alone on the Asgardian ship, and that was actually classic Loki's backstory. So I thought that was hilarious. Um, and Thanos is still dope, even though he's a good guy in this universe. And it's crazy how he actually joined the Ravagers with Yandu and all the rest. So that was really crazy. And then also one of his adopted daughters, Nebula, also had a cool twist where one, she had hair, and two, she was like not so like bitter and like just like kind of one note. Like I feel like she this version of Nebula had a lot more personality, and she had some blonde hair, and she seemed really flirty. I think with T'Challa, which is interesting. So it makes you think if they had a relationship at some point in the past. But I really like Nebula. She was dope too. And I normally don't like her in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I think I liked her a lot more in Infinity War and Endgame. But here she was dope. I really liked her here. So that was really cool too. So some of my favorite parts of this episode were the Wakandan side of T'Challa, when the Wakandan side of T'Challa shined through, and specifically, obviously, it's tied to his ideals, like what he learned from his father in Wakanda, and Wakanda's like overall goal or outlook within the country. And then obviously we see that in the Black Panther movie when he decides to come public as a country, which hadn't been done before. It was always a secretive country that was hoarding their own vibranium resources. And that was really dope because that was kind of this version of Star-Lord's whole goal in life. His goal was to help as many people as he can across the galaxy and across the universe. And we see that with the Embers of Genesis, the goal where that they were trying to do the heist against another flip of a character, which is the Collector. So we hear T'Challa like we could use this to feed countless worlds and so many like billions of people across the galaxy, and that's why the Ravagers want to get it. Um, but the Collector, he's like the straight up villain in this episode, which I wasn't expecting. Like I knew he was gonna be in the episode. I just thought he was gonna be like kind of like a little side thing. I didn't expect that he would be the actual main villain. So that was really cool and interesting because they explained that he took control of like the galaxy and became like a kingpin when Thanos turned to the good side. And it actually makes sense because when you think of it, I'm not sure, like they should have maybe done this because it wasn't 100% clear. But I don't think the Collector was necessarily after the orb in this episode. Ronan was mentioned, but for some reason they never like showed him or talked about him again after the beginning, which was the flip on the scene, original scene in the actual Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Um, But it would have made sense in the original timeline that that would have been the Collector's goal, because in the post-credit scene from Thor: The Dark World, he says one down, five to go when he gets the ether, which is the reality stone. So that might have actually been this version of the Collector, his goal, in the grand scheme. Instead of Thanos trying to get all the Infinity Stones, the Collector might have been doing that. And we see he has a lot of cool things like Hela's crown, and he had Mjolnir and Captain America's shield. So this universe might be bad for the Avengers, but I think just like in episode one, overall, I think this version of events, this timeline, is actually better than the original timeline. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if that'll be a theme that continues throughout the show. I don't think it'll be every single episode because Marvel Zombies is going to happen, and obviously that's a worst case scenario. But so far, it seems like these timelines are actually better than the sacred timeline. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing that I really loved about episode two of What If was how Korath, the main like hench person of Ronan from Guardians, how he actually knows the alias of Starlord when T'Challa is Starlord, and in the original Guardians he was like, who are you? When Starlord was trying to show off and say his name, but like nobody calls him that. So that was really dope, and he was like a huge fanboy of T'Challa Starlord in this episode, and that was a really funny like running gag in the episode. And I just thought it was awesome how T'Challa liberated a few people or things in this episode. Like we had Cosmo. He saw Cosmo and he just couldn't let him stay there because he feels bad for these animals and people in the collector's collection. And then we also see him let out Howard the Duck. It's mostly to so he could guide him to where he needs to go. But either way, he still let him out, and he didn't like hold him hostage or anything. So he freed Howard, and Howard's little scene was really cool too. I love Howard the Duck; he's hilarious. And then at the end, he doesn't do it himself, but he inspires Karina, the pink slave that the collector had in the original movie, and also here, he inspires her to free herself by taking out Ebony Maw, who was watching T'Challa. So that was dope too. And I like how the collector had the same fate in here as the Grandmaster did in Thor Ragnarok, where all of the people that he was ruling over or holding hostage as slaves comes out and rebels against him. So I thought that was really funny. And there's actually a cameo of the Grandmaster's ship in the room where T'Challa finds his ship. And that moment was actually also one of my favorite moments when he finds his Wakandan heritage and learns that his family is still out there and still alive. So I thought that was really cool. One of my other favorite parts was actually the ending, like little post-credit scene when we see Ego finally go down, because Peter Quill was Ego's offspring in this universe, and that was the intended target when the Ravagers go to Earth to go kidnap him. But because in this universe, the thing that changed was that Yandu, instead of going himself, sends his underlings to go get Starlord. But instead of getting Starlord, they get T'Challa. So that was kind of funny. And I thought that was a good way to explain it. But we see the actual Peter Quill, because he never left. He's still living in his hometown of, I think, Missouri. And he's working at the Dairy Queen where his father and mother had a date, which is really interesting. And we actually saw that in Guardians Volume 2 when Ego was using the seeds that he planted across the galaxy, across the universe. It engulfs the building. So he's actually working there now because he's stayed there his whole life. But Ego finally finds him and goes to him. And it seemed like he's going to recruit him for the same purpose that he wanted to in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But my guess is in this universe, he will actually accept his offer because his life has been nothing. Like, there's no point of his life. It's probably very boring. So it sets up the premise of Celestial Peter Quill versus T'Challa as Starlord, which is really interesting because it's like Starlord versus himself, but this Starlord is obviously T'Challa, not Peter Quill. So that'll be really interesting, and I hope they do tell that story. And the Watcher even says that's a story for another day. I don't think it would be in this season, but it might be like a follow up in the next season. Like I'm starting to have a feeling that the next season will, each episode will tell the continuation of the stories that are in this season. So like episode one of this season will continue, and episode one of next season, and same thing for episode two. And obviously, I think we still will see a continuation within this season alone, but I think some of those threads will be picked up in the next season, which I'm actually really cool with, and I think that would be dope. So I'm really loving the show so far. The first episode wasn't my favorite just because it was so close to the original, but episode two really did a good job at switching it up and making things really fresh. And I hope it continues down that route, and I think it will for the next 7 episodes. So yeah, it's really dope, and I'm pretty sure the episodes will tie together. Each of the heroes in each of these stories will come together as the guardians of the multiverse, and they'll fight the Watchers, I guess. And I believe their adversary will be Ultron, who gathers the Infinity Stones. So that'll be really interesting because Ultron was stopped pretty quickly in Age of Ultron, which it wasn't actually an Age of Ultron, but maybe this version it will be like where he actually wins and he controls Earth for at least a while, and it'll take the Guardians of the Multiverse to stop him. So that's really cool that we're seeing like the big villains of the Avengers movies return in cool ways, like Loki in his show. He became a hero, and Loki's also gonna be in this, I believe, probably as the main villain in one of the episodes. And Thanos has a cool flip, and we'll see more of Ultron, which is dope because we haven't seen him since his movie. So I'm excited to see what happens next. But that's my review. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.